Hey everyone, today I'm working on a Blood Angel for my kill team. Over a black primer I have used Mephiston Red and all I'm using is my airbrush. You can use a regular paintbrush, but I'm just going over with some Evil Sunz Scarlet. I do use my airbrush quite a lot. I do like to use it for the majority of my base coatings and some of the highlights, as it just allows me to be a bit quicker with some decent results without having to like glaze everything and take loads of time. Moving on to the next step, I used Wild Rider Red and I left some of the residue within the airbrush itself. However, it wouldn't be like a true 50-50 mix. It would just probably be something around like 80-20 mix, so 80% Wild Rider Red and then 20% of Evil Sunz Scarlet. I just did this as a slight transition. Again, if you are using brush, then you'll most likely be doing either just some layering or some glazing. Either or is good, but again, I'm doing this just for speed. Next up, I'm just doing a full layer of Wild Rider Red. I started doing it as a zenithal highlight, but then I realized that's not what I really wanted, so I started doing more of a frontal highlight on the front and then a couple of angles at the back. But this color selection is quite nice and it really works together, so that is basically why I selected it. I'm pretty sure it's close enough to the original sort of colorway that GW actually used for theirs. Moving on to the next step, I'm just blocking in all the black areas. So this is going to be the chainsword, casing, shoulder trim, like all the rubber tubing in between the legs and all the joints. And then I'm also doing the things that are the metallics as well. I'm starting on the highlights now, and this is just using pure Wild Rider Red. And I'm doing pretty much all the edges. You don't have to do all the edges. I'm kind of trying to get a chunky highlight, and since I've done the airbrushing, it sort of blends in kind of thing. So for the areas that you didn't really hit with the airbrush, or if you're not even using an airbrush, if you're just using regular glazing, then you should be able to see it quite clearly over the Evil Sunz Scarlet. However, this is a bit of a chunkier highlight, so you should be able to see it, and since I was using an airbrush, it's not at full opacity, so it should be able to be visible anyway. Next, I'm using Fire Dragon Bright, and for this one I'm using smaller area, and I'm doing a thinner highlight. And for this I'm doing mostly like the top facing edges and some little other edges, as it just makes the edging and highlights pop a little bit more. It does actually look really nice. I've actually not painted a Blood Angel before this, besides Lamati's, but I don't count him as like an actual Blood Angel in the sense that he's got black armor and not the classic red armor. For the next step, this is where I start my glazes, and I'm starting with Wild Rider Red with a mixture of glaze medium. So usually I just do 1 drop of paint with 1 drop of glaze medium. Obviously it depends on what paint you're using. There are other methods that you can use. Using distilled water was a comment on one of my other videos, and using just regular tap water. I can never get the hang of regular tap water, so I've just used glaze medium, as that has had the biggest impact. All I'm doing where I believe the highlight will be, and then I start glazing that area and glaze towards the center of that highlight. If you've watched my previous video, I show a method on how I find these highlights. If you haven't watched it, go check it out. I'll throw a card on the screen. Next, I use a glaze mix of Fire Dragon Bright and glaze medium, and essentially I'm doing exactly the same thing. However, this time I'm doing it within the previous glaze highlight, and I'm just doing a smaller area. Still doing the same method, brushing towards the center. The way I usually glaze is by using thin layers and slowly building up. It can be quite time consuming, so it might not be the best method. There are other methods to use, but this is my preferred method. Next up is shading, and for this what I use is a mixture of glaze medium and corn red, and I'm doing the armor panels, and I'm also doing the recesses and shading the recesses. So for the armor panels I'm doing all the areas that might not be getting enough light, as well as I'm shading away from the previous highlights. So I'm trying to leave in a bit of the Mephiston Red and Evil Sunz Scarlet that we previously done. For the final highlights on the armor panels, I'm using Basic Skin Tone by Vallejo Model Air, and again I've created a glaze and I'm just using that glaze inside of the previous glazes that I've made, and I'm just doing like small little dots. When it comes to highlighting the armor panels and doing the actual edge highlights, I'm using just the paint and I'm doing like small little dot highlights. The final part of the shading process, I use an oil wash and I make it quite thin. I use white spirit as thinner, and all I'm doing is just dropping this into all of the recesses. Fairly simple step, and then I come in with the white spirit, and if I make any sort of like little overspills or puddles, I then come clean it up with either a dry brush or some white spirit on a brush. For the final parts, I'm just using Dark Reaper as my black highlight, and I'm just going again, I'm doing edge highlights and then a volumetric highlight on the shoulder trim and over the Aquila and basically all the black areas. I am again using a glaze for this, as I am trying to get better with glazing. Once the Dark Reaper is dried, I then use Dawnstone Grey, and I'm doing again edge highlights and shading towards the center with the glaze medium. I didn't really take too much time on these steps, as I wanted the main point to be on the red armor. When it comes to painting the lenses, I do have a separate video on painting lenses, so it'll be on a recommended card or a linked card in the top left corner. I then quickly whacked over some metallics, so I did the gold with Retributor armor and then a shade of Serum Sepia and then a highlight of Auric Gold, I think it's called. I can't remember the actual name of it. And then for the metallics, I done Lead Belcher and then just highlighted it with some chrome by the Vallejo model there. Unfortunately, my camera died, so I didn't actually get to film them steps. For the leather, I used Mournfang Brown, Scrag Brown, and Deathclaw Brown in that order. I done highlights and I done some like little scratches and little sort of back and forth quick movements over the leather. And then I watered down Mournfang Brown once I finished the Deathclaw Brown and just put it over the top as like a sort of filter. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the video, then please hit the like button. Subscribe if you like my content. And if there's any other videos that you guys want me to do, let me know in the comment section below. I'm watching a ton of Zorp lately, and I really want to create a new board. So I'm thinking maybe like a monthly video on creating a board of some sort and creating like structures and things like that. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.